So the McCarthy era, it is a period of American politics gripped by paranoid conspiracy and the radicalism of the far right. And I'm not talking about Joe McCarthy's anti-communist Red Scare of the 1940s and 50s. I'm talking about our current political moment, as in Kevin McCarthy and House Republicans, as they pursue an agenda fueled by conspiracies, including one we just spoke about with Congresswoman Stansbury, COVID, and the growing fears that the GOP will use the Oversight Committee to spread medical misinformation. And then, of course, there is election denialism, arguably the biggest conspiracy of our time. Donald Trump's lies about the 2020 election were so powerful, in part because the Republican Party had for years cast doubt on the validity of elections, shouting nonstop about non-existent voter fraud. So it wasn't that difficult to make people think that fraud had actually occurred. They were primed to believe it had. And we still see the effects of those election lies years later, like in the campaign of failed Arizona governor candidate Kari Lake. So at a time when it feels like conspiracy theorists are seeping more and more into our everyday existence, it is crucial that we understand how we arrived at this moment of polarized realities and what needs to happen so that we might return to the same spinning globe. In her new book, Off the Edge, journalist Kelly Weill offers a definitive and compelling history of the Flat Earth movement from its origins in 1800s in an English commune to the spread of that theory in the early 2000s with the rise of Facebook and YouTube, to the recent disinformation campaign of the 2020 presidential election and the COVID-19 pandemic. These conspiracies are more interconnected, than you might realize. And joining me now is Kelly Weill. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us. I should note also, you are the author of the book, Off the Edge, Flat Earthers, Conspiracy Culture, and Why People Will Believe Anything. Also joining us is Kyle Spencer, author of Raising Them Right, and an award-winning journalist who focuses on the far right. It's great to have both of you with us. Kelly, let me start with you. In your book, you argue that there is a rather straight line from the flat earth conspiracy that first started floating around in the 1830s to today's QAnon and anti-vax hysteria, even all the way up to election denialism. What is that connective tissue, you think?
Well, you know, a lot of the connective tissue in conspiracy belief is a feeling of uncertainty, of doubt in yourself and doubt in your surroundings, an inability to grapple with the reality around you and how you personally feel. So conspiracy beliefs in a certain way are a coping mechanism. They let people find answers and explanations in a moment when the available information just doesn't jive with them. It doesn't feel comfortable.
Kyle, what do you make of the comparison between today's QAnon, Stop the Steal Republican Party, and the Republican Party ruled by paranoid McCarthyism in the post-war era?
Well, I mean, the thing about conspiracies is they're really always a theatrical kind of distraction from the work of government. And so I think that when you see this happening now during the McCarthy era, it is always a way to be a kind of circus distraction. And I think that nowadays, this is really baked into the GOP ecosystem, this kind of conspiracy generation. And the reason it works is because it erodes confidence in the kinds of institutions that the GOP doesn't like and that its donors don't like. And it also works because it allows the GOP to curry favor with its base, which is a kind of embittered, resentful group, because every conspiracy is really a story of victimization. And the GOP base voter is a victimized voter who's been taken advantage of by, science, medicine, public schools, the woke culture, et cetera.
Hey, Kelly, you write in your book that human beings have always been prone to conspiracies, that in the face of disaster or tragedies, we will look for simple solutions that don't actually exist, almost like an off-ramp, an easy off-ramp to explain things. You mention how in the confusion and horror, for example, of the Black Plague, people simply blame Jews. And it seems like people are even more prone to believing in conspiracy theories nowadays. Do you think that is true? And if so, why? Is it simply the rise of social media?
Well, I don't think people are necessarily more conspiratorial now than they were during the Black Plague. We still have the same human impulses, but what's different is our ability to spread conspiracy theories, our ability to seek out answers in all kinds of niche pockets on the internet that weren't previously available to us. So, whereas word of mouth and rumor might have spread conspiracy theories hundreds of years ago, these days you can sort of pick your own reality online. And I think that's very alluring to people who are looking for different answers in a frightening moment like a pandemic.
And Callie, from birtherism to QAnon, it seems like every few years there is another major conspiracy theory gripping the Republican base. What's coming down the pike? What do you see in the pipeline? Are there any new hysterias that you're watching or tracking?
Oh, there's always one. The big lie about the 2020 election is always huge. I think right now we're going to see a lot of conspiracy theories about climate change. There's a lot of people angry about the idea that we should take action to protect our environment. And I think we're going to start seeing a lot of backlash against that on the right.
Kyle, is there something about today's Republican Party that makes their voters more susceptible to conspiratorial thinking? Why does it seem like the GOP base is always obsessed with groomers or vaccine microchips or Jewish space lasers than on the other side?
I think that what you're seeing is the GOP responding to the shifting demographics in the country, a changing economy, things that have made a lot of the GOP voters uncomfortable. We are in a very transformative time right now. We're at a period when social justice and issues of the past and reckoning with our history have become extremely important to many Americans. And for a lot of people, that's very scary. And so I think the conspiracies become a way to sort of explain away some of that discomfort, and again, to kind of express the victimization that a lot of people feel at a culture that seems to be working against them. And so I think the Republicans with their conspiracies are really answering to these fears and saying, we understand, we're going to sort of feed this beast, that this conspiracy beast, to keep you company, to keep you voting for us. It's a long-term strategy, and it's working. It is definitely working.
Yeah, that's the scary thing. It is working to explain so much of what is happening to the Republican Party. Kyle Spencer, Kelly Weill, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate your time and your insights.